Welcome back to Cask and Point. Today we are doing a flight that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. But before I begin with this, I do have a little bit of a story to tell. As I'm sure you could tell by the thumbnail, there is a little bit inside me that's hurting doing this video. One of the things we're drinking today is a 33-year, 152 proof whiskey. Now, this was a Seelbach pick, and if you're not familiar with Seelbach, basically they're an online retail store. They sell liquor. They ship to any of the states that will allow them to ship, Connecticut being one of them, and they do a lot of barrel picks. And recently they did a 33-year, 152 proof Canadian whiskey barrel pick with Nashville Barrel Company. And I was really excited for this. I had ordered the bottle, and then, unfortunately, I was moving around some bottles in my collection, and I had knocked into a box, and that box had knocked into a bottle behind it, and then that bottle just moved a little bit, and that was just enough to put it over the table, and it had crashed onto the floor, and I don't have soft floor here, and so that bottle immediately totally got destroyed. I hadn't opened the bottle yet. It was sealed. I had spent $230 on it, and just like that, that bottle was gone. And you know, I don't feel bad at all, but I can tell you this whiskey is a terrible whiskey, and I don't miss anything about it already. But no, ultimately, a good friend of mine, Adariz, was willing to part with an ounce of his so that I could do this review here today. So very much thank you, Adariz. He tells me this is an amazing whiskey. I hope he's wrong because I will just feel bad. But if you've ever broken a bottle, feel free to tell the story in the comments. This was the first time I had ever broken any bottle. Funny enough, I have 400 sample jars now, and I've never broken one of them ever. But I broke a bottle, which sucks. And it was a nice bottle. It was an expensive bottle. It was a single barrel that I can never get again, but that's okay. Anyways, today we are drinking some Canadian whiskey. Now, I've gotten the two beasts of 150 proof, and then one that's really up and coming that a lot of people have been trying and reviewing recently. Today we have Found North Batch 9. So Found North is a company that was founded just a few years ago. They blend whiskeys, a lot of Canadian whiskeys. Batch 9 it's obviously at least 19 years old, but it's a mix of 19 to 26-year-old whiskeys. I believe there are 8 different kinds of whiskeys in it. There's a 19-year rye that's finished in ruby port. There's just a normal 19-year rye. There's a 19-year corn. There are 3 23-year-old corns. There's a 22-year-old corn, and I think a 26-year-old corn. One of those may also be a rye, but it's basically a huge mix of Canadian rye, corn whiskey. It's 124 proof, which usually Found North goes for, lower proof relative to some of the crazy Canadian proofs that we're about to talk about, but it gives you, ideally a much more refined taste where you could get a lot more flavors out of it, and it's not just going to punch you in the face. Then the next two we are reviewing is Nashville Barrel Company, who has been sourcing a lot of really high-proof Canadian whiskey recently. This, like I said, is a 33-year, 152 proof whiskey, and this doesn't actually have any special gimmick to it. It's a single barrel. It was aged a long time ago in, this is a 2024 pick, so it was aged in 1991 at the latest. It could have even been 1990, but very old whiskey, and that's going to be fun. And then we have a 27-year Obtainium whiskey, who also sources a lot of their whiskeys, is also able to get a lot of really high proof, either light whiskey or Canadian whiskey. This is a 155 proof, and it's finished in maple syrup barrels. So these are going to be fun. Let's dive right into the whiskey. So like I said, we are going to start with Found North Batch 9 here. Basically, I just want to see how good Canadian whiskey is. I haven't rated a ton of Canadian whiskey. I did try Found North Peregrine, which I did review on my website, which the link is always in the description of my videos. This is the second Found North that I'm trying here today. This is their new one. People have been raving about it. It's the oldest batch that they've had, which means that the youngest whiskey in there is the oldest it's ever been, because, of course, the way batch product works is you have to put the youngest whiskey. This is 19 to 26-year-old whiskey. Let's smell it. Oh, it actually does smell really nice. This is very fruity. Caramel, oak, getting a lot of red fruit here, plums, cherries, even some raspberries and strawberries. A little bit of watermelon. Not a million things going on in this one. Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of musty oak and old oak in there, a little bit of rye spice, a little bit of dill. Definitely looking in the 10 to 15 flavors on this one, which is quite a few. Um, Definitely a lot going on, and it does seem to blend really well. Almost that like there isn't one single thing that's really jumping out on me. I mean, there are so many different flavors here. But let's sip this and let's find out. We are starting with 124 proof. I didn't want to start with 155 proof, so this is in part our warm up for the others. But you know, we'll always go back to them, and we'll give all of our good ratings here. But let's try this 124 proof Found North Batch 9. Wow, just coats the mouth. A lot of caramel, a lot of that red fruit. I can definitely see the rye in here. It is a rye finish in ruby port. I am getting a lot of that like black currant and red currant. Those more wine forward characteristics in there, but it's blending really well with a lot of corn that's giving me the more like stereotypical like soft. I don't think this is a wheater. I don't think that there's really much wheat whiskey in this, but it's giving me those kind of like soft flavors that I get out of like a really high corn percentage bourbons, where it's very sweet, it's very straightforward and caramelly. It's a really nice whiskey. On an initial guess, I'm around an 8 on it actually. Like I really think this is one that I'm getting a ton of flavor on, but it's not punching me in the face. And sometimes I like to be punched in the face. Most of the time, I like to be punched in the face. These are gonna punch me in the face, but I do have a soft spot in my heart for whiskeys that actually, I mean, this tastes way below 124 proof. This is closer to 110 if I'm being honest, but just so much flavor on there to really back it up. Really, really nice here. Let's take a second sip, and then we're gonna move on to two whiskeys that I have not gone a day without thinking about since I got the samples in. I'm so excited for these. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of flavor on that. The oak is a bit stronger on that second sip, but it's not super dry. It's not a tannic oak. Maybe it's a little bit dry, but it's mostly a sweeter oak, a toasty oak, with that caramel and that red fruit and that black currant, and definitely getting a little bit of ruby port flavors here. Obviously, ruby port is usually a younger port than tawny port. I do learn a lot about fortified wines in my sommelier course that I'm taking, so uh, love port. Very good. Actually, really impressed by this one. I think I like it more than the Found North Peregrine, which I had rated as 7.9. There is just more going on this one, whereas I felt like I could pick out even 15 or 20 flavors on the Found North Peregrine, and to my understanding, this thing is going for like $1,000 on secondary right now, and I do not know why. It's not that good. Yeah, it's a 20-year age statement, but it's not. It's just not that good. Like, it's good, but it's not that good. I think Found North Batch 9 is better. Maybe that's a super hot take, but it's clearly giving me a lot more flavor, where it may have, instead of 15 to 20 flavors, it has 10 to 15 flavors, but it's giving me so much more of each flavor that I find it much more enjoyable. It's perfectly balanced, I think. That is a great blended whiskey. But now let's try a whiskey that I can only hope and pray is absolutely god awful. All 20, what is it, 25 ounces in a bottle were totally destroyed. Wow, that smells like caramel. Definitely some fruit. There's like a very strong, like caramel spice note to it. Like butterscotch, toffee, definitely like, red plums, red cherries. Not really getting any of the wine for notes here. It's almost actually smelling a little bit like an Armagnac. Those kinds of like spicy flavors. But there's like they kind of still like a grape influence here. I believe this is just a single barrel product. I don't think it's finished in anything. I don't think Seelbach had done anything fancy. So, but man, it doesn't actually get like a ton of musty oak on it. If you, I can't see in the camera, these are actually really light relative to what I would expect a 33-year-old whiskey to get to. And the reason why Canadian whiskey ends up getting this high proof, basically, bourbon has a required distillation of at max 160 proof or 80% alcohol. which basically means that the government doesn't like us to have fun, and they want to limit how much alcohol we can have in our bourbon. And barrel entry proof has to be at max 125 proof. And fun fact, it was actually 110 proof. And then in 1962, they upped it to 125 proof. They said, fine, you could put a little bit more proof. All that means is basically when you have that mash, that corn and everything, that is going to distill to, a really high proof if you allow it. It'll get up to 180 or even 190 proof, depending on what you put exactly in it, depending on the temperature and all that good stuff. And the thing is, they have to stop that distillation at 160. That's the most it could be in. And then they have to actually water it back down to 125 at max. Now, all of the highest, most well-known whiskeys that that are high proof, Elijah Craig, George C. Stagg Jr., all these things, these are all at barrel entry proof 125 because they want that whiskey to get high proof. And that's why when it's going into the barrel at 125, a lot of that water in it has to evaporate over time in order for it to get to, say, 135, 140 proof. That's why hazmat is super rare in the bourbon world, because there just isn't that much out there, because just so much whiskey is just never going to get that high proof. So Canadian whiskey, on the other hand, is distilled upwards of 180 or to even 190 proof, basically as high as vodka is distilled. And then they don't have nearly as many requirements for the barrel aging of it. And so not only is this going to be distilled at a much higher proof, it's going to enter the barrel at a much higher proof. It is also going to then, obviously, it's 33 years. Over time, water in that kind of, the liquid that goes into a barrel, which, basically starts off as like a moonshine, clear liquid that will, and of course, gain the color from the barrels over time. There's water in there, and that water will evaporate over time, which is why older whiskeys tend to have higher proof, but that also means they tend to get much more oaky, because now you're getting a super oaky, and that's why they water down things like Pappy's 15. That's why something like Elijah Craig C923, that's 13 years, 7 months, and 133 proof is super impressive, because that's an old whiskey and a high proof whiskey that they didn't water down. This is all to say, Canadian whiskey can have some fun. They can get into the 150s, I've even seen 160 proof before. American whiskey just isn't really getting there. A light American whiskey will, and that's because they don't have those same requirements, and that's going to be much more comparable to Canadian whiskey. But anyways, that is enough talking. Let's sip on this 155 proof, the highest age of any whiskey I've tried. But then the highest proof is going to be beaten in just a second here, but not that age. Just so much. A lot more musty oak is coming off on this one now. There's definitely some fruit in there, some caramel in there. Doesn't smell super crazy though, but let's taste it and see. I don't know what to say. I'm devastated. I am absolutely in shambles. That's an amazing whiskey. That is so good. I am much more depressed than I was hoping I would be after this video. I hope this Obtainium, absolutely slaughters it. But man, that is a whiskey. So this Found North Batch 9, what was really unique about it to me is that it's filling your mouth with flavor. Like, in all the different spots in your mouth, you're getting something. You're getting some spice, some fruit, and all these things. That just did that times 10. That just gave me so much more flavor. It is actually a surprisingly similar flavor profile, where I'm getting a lot of the high corn sweetness, carameliness, with some red fruit in there that's mixed in. Definitely some oak. It's actually not a super different flavor profile. It's not a crazy flavor profile. It's just there's so much of it there. This is the oldest whiskey I've ever tried. Obviously, much older than I am, this whiskey. Obviously distilled in probably 1991. And man, did they set out on an amazing project. Man, is that worth $200. That is just an amazing whiskey. This is, on my first sip, I'm thinking mid to high 8s. But I will take a second sip here. We are going to go through this all, and then we'll rate it all at the end. But this is a good whiskey. Oh my god. Just so much flavor, and there's still a ton of balance. It's not like not a single thing is dominating in this pour. There's just 10 different things that are all working simultaneously together. The fruit, the oak, the caramel, just all of these things. But let's take one more sip, and then we'll move on to the maple finish. So much of it. I mean, look, it's going to lose points on not being super unique. And obviously, it's a long finish. Full stop. No medium long, no medium. This is a long finish. And that red fruit is just not going away. That, like, it's almost like honestly, like a ruby port finish. A little bit of that, those Armagnac flavors. Again, this may just be like a Canadian thing where they're just, getting more of these kinds of flavors in their whiskeys. Or, things that I would associate with those kinds of things. But it's really good. It's mouth coating. I don't think it's blown me away in the way that like a William Little Weller, which I would rate an 8.8. It's not getting to an 8.8 for me. It's not getting to even like Thomas H. Handy or anything like that. But it is really good. Like I did pay $200 for that, and I'm definitely disappointed that I don't have that bottle to enjoy. That is just so good. But now we're gonna do a fun one. 155.2 proof, and a 27-year. This pick was actually done by the new Era Bourbon Club. Somebody had sent me a sample of this, and my good buddy, actually, Mad Max, had sent me a sample of this. And this whiskey was obviously distilled in 1995. The pick was done in 2022, so 27 years old. And it was finished in maple. And obviously, Canada, they have their maple. Obtainium, what they do is they source pretty much all of their whiskeys. And they are really into sourcing really high-proof Canadian whiskeys. They've been doing it for a long time. They finish a lot of those whiskeys themselves, too. And so they've been in the game a lot longer than Nashville Barrel Co. that had created this 33-year, or I should say, probably sourced this 33-year. But let's see if they're better at it. Let's see how they do. Let me cleanse the palate a little bit here. Also, for what it's worth, that did not drink anywhere close to 152 proof. Like, it drank like 120 proof. Not even like anywhere, like no liver gut punch on that one that I get on the hazmats usually. Totally under proof on that one, which isn't surprising. I mean, the way that distillation process works, and also the way the aging works in Canada, it's the same, reason how it works in Scotland, where you need more time to get really intricate whiskey, because whiskey is aging with how much contact it has in the barrel. When it gets hot, and then it gets cold, and it gets hot, and then it gets cold, you have high continentality, as they call it. And that means that the highest temperatures, kind of, the average temperatures in the summer months and the average temperatures in the winter months have a great difference. When you have high continentality, that is not a word to try to pronounce when you're drinking 150 proof whiskey. That is really high in a state like Kentucky, which is why Kentucky is so good at bourbon. But in something like Scotland, it's just so cold year round, which is why you need 18 years or 20 years or 25 years to make a really good scotch. But you need 6 to 8 years in Kentucky. You need 4 years in Georgia or Texas to make really impressive whiskey. In Canada, you need 30 years, unfortunately. And so that's why these are tasting way underproof, because they're actually just not that much flavor on them relative, they're much more refined, and there is a lot of flavor, but it's not punching you in the same way that the hazmat will do when you're having a bourbon hazmat. But anyways, let's try this maple. Tons of maple syrup on the nose, caramel, oak, some red fruit. Honestly, similar to these Armagnac and port flavors, the red currant, the black currant, the spice, a lot of the same flavors that I'm getting on these first two, but definitely a lot more maple caramel sweetness on this one, which isn't surprising at all. Let's taste it and see what 155 proof tastes like. Wow. Wow. There's a lot going on there. It's that maple is all over the place. I'm getting maple throughout the palate. The maple is still in my mouth, and I'll let you guys know when it ends. But it's mixing with some fruit, with some caramel, with some oak. But honestly, the maple is the dominating factor here, to the point where I don't think it's over finished, because I think it's just an incredible maple. The maple's still there, by the way. So this is 100% a long finish. This maple might not go away for a minute or two. It's like a dessert. And it's so good. I mean, it's also drinking something like maybe 125 proof, nowhere close to 155. Really good. I mean, we're looking at 3 whiskeys that are all in the 8s that I'm honestly very impressed by. I think they're honestly rivaling, some of the like B-Tax and some of the top quality whiskeys that I've tried in the last few months. Really, really nice stuff here. But it's really the maple on this one that's dominating. It's not as complex as the 33 or 152 proof. I think I'm just getting more flavors on this one. Like this one, I think it's actually more like 8 or 10 flavors. But that maple is just so long and so rich, so decadent. I'll take a second sip here. Then we're going to go through, we're going to rate them all, we're going to rank them, and then, that'll be our Canadian whiskey flight for the day. There's like a sweetness on the lip. Like, I can tell it's a sweet whiskey. And it's not, like, it's not stunning me. Like, this isn't high 8s for sure. I would actually say it's probably low to mid 8s, like an 8.3, 8.4. I'm still thinking about it here. But there is some pepper in there, which I think is actually, like usually I don't absolutely love pepper, but it's almost like it's giving an extra element to that maple, to that caramel, in a way that, like, there actually isn't a ton of fruit that's coming through on this one. I wish there was a lot more. I'm not blown away. I think this bottle was also something like $200 when it was released. I wouldn't be disappointed with this for $200, especially if it's a pick that you're doing with your friends and, you all enjoy the same bottle and can always, like, even if you're 1,000 miles apart, just, like, take it out at the same time and enjoy it together. But this is, it's so mapley, it's so syrupy, that it's actually, like, it's losing a lot of points on what I would imagine would be a much more complex whiskey, especially for the proof. I mean, we're looking at 27 years and 155 proof. You name those statistics, you're expecting a lot. And I am expecting a lot, and this certainly met a lot of my expectations, but the maple is just so dominating that I think I'll take one more sip and then I'm going to rate it here, but I'm leaning in, it's in the 8s, but I don't think it's going to be, high 8s or anything like that. I mean, the viscosity, I can taste the maple before I even, like, drank it. Like, the maple just, it enters your mouth and it's all over your mouth. You are having a dessert here. You're eating a maple donut when you have this. Like, you are having a dessert, you're having a relaxing, sweet pour. I would have this, like, after a meal, and this would be my dessert. Like, that is just mind-boggling how they did that. I am thinking 8.4. I think it's really impressive. It's actually winning a lot more unique points than I think the first two are winning. But where it's, not getting to the high 8s for me is that it's not getting that, like, super complex 15 different flavors that I wish I got out of it. But a long finish along with just maple, more maple. Like, here's just a ton of maple. I would drink that over any Stag Junior batch, I think, except for maybe my favorite Stag Junior batch. I would drink that over, Eagle Rare 17. I would drink that over so many whiskeys that I would rate, around an 8, low 8s or anything. 8.4, I think I fully stand by that. That is a great whiskey. Now let's go back and let's rate this Nashville Barrel Co. Like I said already, this one isn't allowed to win. So I can tell you it's already an 8.3 at least. Just heartbroken over this whiskey. But let's see how it really stands up here. There's just so much more fruit on it. There's so much. There are more flavors on this one. It smells like there's actually a real balance here. I think where the Obtainium isn't doing well is that it doesn't have, like, a huge balance of, like, here are 8 different flavors and here are they interacting with each other. Here's a huge caramel and maple syrupy, bomb, and then I'll follow it with a little bit of oak, a little bit of all these other things. Whereas this is just gonna be so much more of those, like, red fruit combination with it. But let's take a sip here and let's give it a rating. Just coats your mouth so well. It's a spicy whiskey. There is a lot of rye spice on this. There's so much of that, like there's red fruit in there, there's oak in there, there's honestly a little bit of, like, that caramel, even, like, mapliness of it, but there's mostly, like, I'm filled with spice tingling all around my mouth. And that is not going to be for everybody, if I'm being honest. That is not the kind of thing that I think It's giving me more punch than any of the whiskeys on here, which is something I typically like. But I think some people may actually prefer other whiskeys. You know, I like it. My rating isn't end all be all. You know, I think I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing, but everybody's palate is a little bit different. But this is a whiskey that, you know, I mean, it's gonna win today, unfortunately. But it's pretty close because that maple decadence is really enjoyable in a way that, you know, this isn't giving me something that I don't feel like I couldn't get something similar off something else. Like this Fountain North Batch 9, I'm going to take the last sip of it and rate it, but I do feel like, honestly, like, the Fountain North Batch 9 is a slightly less flavorful variant of it, to the point where I wouldn't be, like, I am heartbroken that I don't have this bottle. I wish I had the bottle, but I'm not, like, absolutely devastated that it's not something that I could never taste these kinds of flavors on other whiskeys. But I'm going to try the Fountain North Batch 9. Now, I will leave this right now at an 8.5. I may update that, but let's do the Fountain North Batch 009. Just incredible whiskeys today. I love doing these flights when they're all 8s. And I'm just getting to enjoy 3 ounces of just absolutely amazing whiskey with you guys. So much fun. It's less fun. We're going to do a Michter's flight at some point soon where it's just going to be the basic Michter's. And I can tell you that flight is going to be a little bit less fun than this one is. But, you know, I am curious because actually I haven't tried half of the normal Michter's yet. So we'll do it at some point. But, yeah, a little bit more ethanol nose on this one than I think on the other two. Expected. It is a little bit younger. And while I wouldn't typically call 19 to 26 years youthful, when it's Canadian whiskey, 19 years actually isn't that old. And we just saw how 27 to 33 years aren't, like, absolutely the most complex, amazing pours in the world. You know, they're not 9s, 9.5s. And so 19 years, by comparison, is going to be a little bit on the younger end. But where it's unique is that it's giving me, like, almost like a coconutty flavor. Like a coconut tropical flavor that I think I actually wasn't getting on this the first time around. Like a blue, like I almost want to say blue fruit, but blue fruit doesn't mean anything. So I'm thinking like a coconut, like a mango, mixing in with the red fruit, mixing in with the other things here. That's a really nice nose. Like that is a well blended whiskey. Let's try it. Let's see how it is. Wow. You see, it's better second time around. I mean, there's so much flavor, and it's like I am actually getting a lot more tropical flavors on this one. That mango, that coconut, pineapple. Like you still have some red cherry, red plum, red currant, black currant on this one. You have oak. You have the caramel. You have you know, a little bit of pepper. You have a little bit of rice spice. You have a little bit of that dill. Really, like that's a good whiskey. And for a whiskey that I think is much more attainable, I actually bought a few of these in a store for, I think it was $145.99, and I think that's around MSRP on these. I know they've been hitting Total Wines and they've been a little bit more expensive, but that's because Total Wine isn't really selling, you know, nice things at MSRP anymore because they're getting those extra $10 or $20. But that is really nice here. I mean I was actually initially thinking around an 8. But I like it a lot more than Peregrine, actually. I'm thinking an 8.2. Yeah, I think Found North Batch 09, 8.2. I think it's not getting at the 155 proofers, but if you want a much more relaxing pour that's still shooting you with tons of flavor, that's a really nice whiskey. Like, that is battling with... yeah, okay, I'm going to update it. I'm going to say 8.1. Maybe it's not battling against, like, my favorite Stag Junior batches, but I do really appreciate just how much flavor, how much proof is on that. You know, where it's not tasting 124 proof, it's tasting like 110. You know, I think 110 proof, 120, you know, these are in the 120s and this is about 110 proof. That's what they taste like to me. You know, I really don't expect that you're going to be blown away with the heat on these whiskeys, because there isn't actually that much heat, which is for better or for worse. But I think with that much flavor, and cool statistics, because if somebody comes over and you say, this is my 150 proof whiskey, that's pretty cool. But I will actually take the last sip of this one here, even though I've already rated it, just because it's so good that I want to enjoy it with you guys. But that is the Canadian flight. Unfortunately, this beauty did win. It's so good. I mean, really, I'm glad for I think there were 138 of them. I know about 8 of those people. Congratulations to you guys. There are only 137 left in existence, and I can assure you my bottle finished before everybody else's. Enjoy them. Definitely keep your eye out. I will keep my eye out for if Seelbach releases another 33 or 152 proof, and I'm gonna jump on it. But really just great stuff out of Nashville Barrel Co. there. But let's take this last sip here of the Obtainium. I don't see any reason why I should have like ice cream or like a sundae or anything like that after my meal. Have some maple finished Obtainium whiskey. Amazing, desserty. Honestly, I actually think on different days I might flip the 150s. I think they're definitely both ahead of this Found North Batch 9. But I think you're looking at flavor, complexity, a really refined grape pour versus just such a desserty. And I do tend to, give these desserty pours a little bit higher ratings. Like Penelope Rio, not a complex pour, not an interesting pour, but that honey rates at like mid 7s for me, where I think if anything else I didn't have as much honey, it would have been like 7 or 6.8 or something like that. I really do like those desserty pours because they give you something unique that you just couldn't get out of another barrel. That is the most unique pour of the night. But that's Canadian whiskey for you. Look into it. If you haven't looked into Canadian whiskey yet, and you like bourbon, I can assure you, after doing this flight, I am convinced that it beats out a lot of the bourbon. Now, obviously, we rated some really good Canadian whiskeys that I think were all about $200, give or take. Today, we didn't try cheap Canadian whiskey. Maybe it's like way, way worse. But check out Canadian whiskey. But with that, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun doing this. This was probably my favorite flight thus far. Really, really loved seeing how different these whiskeys were from each other. Tropical fruit, just a million flavors, and maple syrup decadence all day. 1, 2, 3. Thank you all for watching. Have a lovely rest of your days, and I will catch you all in the next one.